special prayer for their families and all those who are grieving with them, because I personally know one lady that lost her life, and it's just so sad. Um, Mr. Pridemore, did you want to say anything?
No, Chair Shaw, you're doing great.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and get started in the order of the presentation that we've got, starting with Georgia Power Company. And I know we've talked about around 15 minutes or so to try to get this done. But if you don't need the full 15 minutes, obviously that's fine too, but up to 15 to go over, and then we'll have some time to take some questions as well. So I'll call on Georgia Power Company first.
Thank you, Chairman Shaw. Can you hear us okay?
We can.
Excellent. Welcome. My name is Jeremiah Haswell. I'm the Director of Regulatory Affairs for Georgia Power. I have with me Cleve Fan, who's our VP of Distribution Support, and Chima Choki, who's our VP of Customer Services, and Jacob Hawkins, our Director of Corporate Communications. First, I think I want to start with a message that I believe many on this call will follow, that this storm is one of the most destructive, or excuse me, it's the most destructive storm we have ever seen hit the Georgia Power Company service territory. As you know, the storm entered in the Valdosta area where you are, Commissioner Shaw, and that picture behind you says it all.
That's my front yard.
Oh, wow. We had 80% of the state that saw hurricane or tropical storm force winds all the way from Valdosta through Athens and Augusta. And so this was truly a statewide event, and Georgia Power has mounted a statewide response. Before the storm even hit, a week before, we were monitoring the path, staging crews, staging personnel. We called on our mutual assistance network that we're a part of and brought in up to 10,000 employees staged, ready to go. We staged material. We set up sites where we could house that material, and we were ready prior to the storm hitting. As part of that effort, first thing, we got all the Georgia Power crews motivated and moving and responding very first day. They were all positioned and ready. We called in crews from Alabama Power, Mississippi Power, and today over 35 different companies from across, the mutual assistance network and other contractors. So there is a massive response here. We're now to 20,000 employees, boots on the ground, responding to the storm across the state. For some of the numbers that y'all want to report on, I'm going to turn it over to Cleve Fan to tell you how the storm response is going, where we were and where we're at, and where we're headed.
Yep. Thanks, Jeremiah. Hey, everybody, Cleve Fan. So Jeremiah touched on it. Most devastating storm we've experienced at Georgia Power in our history. So far, we've restored power now to over 1.2 million customers, largely driven by that preparation that was done ahead of the storm and the investments we've made in our system, to improve smart grid technology and things like our grid investment program. It has been just an incredible effort across the eastern half of our territory. Just thinking about the damage that we've seen, over 8,300 poles down. And just for comparison's sake, we keep track of the storms in our history, and over the last decade, the most poles we've seen across the state impacted was right around 2,000. That was Hurricane Michael, obviously a devastating storm in and of itself. So we've got Valdosta, the Savannah area, Waycross, Dublin, Vidalia, Augusta, Waynesboro, Thompson, all these areas impacted. The Augusta operating headquarters alone has over 2,000 poles down, including 2.5 mile section of road with only 3 poles left standing. So just an incredible amount of damage. We were talking with the National Weather Service, and I haven't seen anything official on this, but in our conversation, the damage that they've seen in the Augusta area it looks like 120 mile an hour wind type damage. So just an incredible amount of damage. I'll run through some of the other kind of factors we've got in terms of damage. Over 21,000 spans of wire down. You compare that to other storms, the largest we've seen before that in the last decade was about 5,000 spans of wire down. So really, when you're thinking about multiples of the amount of work to be done, 4 times some of these major storms we've experienced. And with the 20,000 or so personnel here, we've got 5,500 vegetation management personnel, significantly more than we've ever had on the Georgia Power system, 10,000 line personnel, including folks from as far away as California, Oregon, and Canada coming to help us. We've used our mutual assistance network. There's regional mutual assistance in our industry. We lean in heavily to help each other out in situations like this. Y'all know Florida, the devastation in North Carolina. It was a wide area that was impacted in our country, and our utilities have really pulled together and reached into Western and Northeastern, North Atlantic mutual assistance groups to help make sure that we can get out the help here to support our customers as quickly and safely as possible. So just to hit on some of those areas and kind of where we are, and these numbers are as of noon today. We are at 85% of the impacted customers in the Valdosta and Macon areas restored. We are at 90% statewide, on path to 95% restored statewide Saturday evening. Valdosta area 80%, Savannah 95%, and really the last area where we expect our crews to really collapse over the next few days is the Augusta area, where 66% of those customers have been restored. Y'all know we will work around the clock until every customer is restored. We've got 95% targeted for Saturday. Know that there are areas with significant damage. I mentioned that street in Augusta with just the 3 poles left standing. That will go beyond Saturday, and so will many other areas with smaller customers. And we've done a big push to communicate with our customers when we expect restoration. Now, we encourage our customers to go to the outage map. I think it's actually on behind us if you can see it. georgiapower.com/storm, and you can see real-time information as resources move into areas and we see times pull in or potentially push out. We will communicate that with our customers and ask that they continue to use that outage map tool to get updates.
Yeah, for a little context, when Cleve said 1,000 spans of wire, or 21,000 spans of wire, that's the equivalent of 1,000 miles of down power lines. So there's a little context to that.
For sure. Thank you.
Commissioner, that's kind of the update we had. If there's any questions from the commission or any that y'all received, we'd definitely be willing to take those.
Well, thank y'all for the update. That's just unbelievable. Anyone have any questions for them?
Jeremiah, I'd like to know about inventory of supplies, poles, wire, transformers, considering how much has to be brought in new. Talk to us a little bit about access to inventory.
Yep. So we've got a large team stood up that was pre-planning and pre-positioning inventory, poles, transformers, wire from across the Southern Company system, not just from Georgia Power. Those people continue to work, continue to move truckloads of material daily. So far, we have not had shortages of material. Cleve, anything?
You're exactly right, Jeremiah. Really a great job pre-planning, and we're already replenishing stock that we're pulling for this storm. So we've been in constant contact with our supply chain team and feel really good about where we are from a material standpoint. We have seen in the industry some requests through mutual assistance for materials. We have not had to make those. We've had to change our process, just do some processes due to the volume of work and the number of places that we have crews working. Now, you think about a typical hurricane type response, it might be a headquarters or two that are the most heavily impacted. With this being spread across the entire eastern half of our territory, we have over 20 staging sites with sleeper trailers and showers and lay down yards for material. We're taking material straight from the manufacturer to some of these staging sites rather than through our typical channel of through our material distribution center. So we have been able to avoid so far, Commissioner Pridemore, any challenges with supply chain.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Johnson.
I would imagine we have a lot of media that can help us spread some safety messages out there. A lot of folks are probably digging out from their homes. What may seem apparently, what should folks do if they come across what appears to be a live wire? Is there a hotline or a number that they can reach out to?
Yes, Commissioner. So we do have we have shared that information on all our channels, social media, online, and to customers as well. If there is a live wire situation, they can call into the outage line, and there's no wait times on that line, and report an outage, and then it is expedited. We keep that in communication with the storm center, and then we have somebody out there immediately to try and resolve it.
Yeah, and so that number, Commissioner, is 1-888-891-0938. And we remind customers, treat any downline as if it's energized, never touch it, don't drive over it, anything like that, and make sure you call and report it.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner McDonald.
I can visually see a broken pole. I can visually see a line on the ground. Tell me about the impact of our transformers, the oil in the transformer when a pole is snapped. Is it retrievable? Is it out of service totally? What's the on the transformers, please?
Sure. Yeah. So often when we see a transformer hit the ground, it is typically taken out of service. I'd say 99% of the time. So when we see 8,000 plus poles broken, those poles that have transformers on them, we have a process to make sure if there is some kind of oil leak, that is contained and done safely. And those transformers are either refurbished or recycled and replaced. But the magnitude of the work, when you have a pole broken, the pole has to be old pole removed, the debris removed, new pole set, new equipment hung, considerable impact to the duration of an outage.
And Commissioner, sometimes those transformers may be left for a number of days. Customers be aware that we are coming back to pick those up for recycling and make sure there's no environmental harm as well.
Yeah, it's a great.
But there's not a transformer on every broken pole, though, is it?
No, sir. No, sir. There is not.
So where you've got 6,000 broken poles, you might have what?
Yeah, we actually track those stats, and we're looking at over 1,600 transformers damaged. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Well, as we said, thank y'all and especially thank you folks out there on the ground that are working like never before. It doesn't go unnoticed, and folks are just going to have patience as we all get through this.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner, and I'd like to say thank you to our customers for their patience. Know that we were prepared, and right now we're performing, but we need patience as we finish. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We pray for their safety, continued safety out there as well.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, thank you, Georgia Power. Next we're going to go to Dennis Chastain with Georgia EMC.
All right. Can you hear me, Commissioner?
Yes, sir. Dennis, how you doing?
All right.
You hanging
Doing
in
well.
there?
Doing well. Hanging in there. Hanging in there. Well, good afternoon, everybody. And Commissioner Shaw and the other commissioners, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you this afternoon, talk a little bit about, from the EMC's perspective, what has transpired with Hurricane Helene and where we are with our restoration efforts. Don't have to describe the destruction. I think, Commissioner Shaw's background there tells it all. Commissioner, if that's truly your backyard, it's probably close by, and that's our territory you're looking at right there. That's what it looks like across really wide swaths of our territory. We're kind of the same pattern that Georgia Power's got. Obviously, it came in south central Georgia and then went up the eastern side of the state. So, its height, it probably affected most every EMC to a degree, but there are 11 EMCs in that south central up through east that are the most severely impacted and still have major outages that they're dealing with. We serve mostly the rural areas in the state. Just to give you a little background, we serve 73% of the land area of the state, 157 to 159 counties. We also operate the largest distribution network in the state, about 197,000 miles. That's counting all 41 EMCs in the state. So we're covering long distances and often long distances that have low density on them. Of these 11 EMCs that are affected, their average density is about 5 customers per mile. So a lot of line that's serving, very few people, that's going through some very rural parts of our state. So give me a few numbers on this. At our peak, we had about 435,000 EMC member consumers that were without power as of this morning. That number has dropped to around 150,000. So that's about a 65% restoration rate. We have basically crews in they talked about mutual assistance, our mutual aid network. We've got crews in the state helping these 11 co-ops that are still affected. They've come in from 12 states, as far west as Nebraska and Oklahoma and Texas, and as far north as Illinois, Indiana, and Pennsylvania. And we have more coming. We're now moving past, in the western side, moving past into Utah and those areas to get help as well to come in. In addition to that, we have our native crews for the EMCs that have already got their outages repaired or didn't see significant outages. They're moving crews into these areas as well. So we've got a small army out there. I can't give you an accurate exact number, but I'll say this, that we have doubled, tripled, in some places quadrupled the workforce that's normally working in those EMC areas. Just like Georgia Power was talking about, we also have 6 base camps set up for these crews to house, feed them, where they can get laundry facilities, those kind of things as well, to help house all these crews coming in. In fact, 2 of our base camps are being expanded right now because of crews that we expect to come in from Florida once their restoration is fully completed down there. So, the damage is really the picture that the Commissioner, Chairman Shaw, has behind him, says 1,000 words. It's hard to really describe the level of devastation that's out there in these areas. But, needless to say, there are thousands upon thousands of broken poles. I can't give you an accurate exact number. As you know, our co-ops are all individual companies. While we do our best to try to track that, we don't have that aggregate number for you, but trust you to say that it's thousands for us as well. It's miles and miles of line that is damaged, either laying on the ground or broken. So all that is in the process of being repaired. I didn't have any comments about the supply chain, but I'll go ahead and answer that question that Commissioner Pridemore had. We are not experiencing any supply chain issues at this time. We have a supply company that the majority of our EMCs get their materials from, Gresco. It's owned by the electric cooperatives. There are sister organizations like that across the country. So Gresco so far has had no issues with getting poles, getting cross arms, transformers, conductors, whatever is needed, materials that are needed. And like Georgia Power was saying, we're also having some those items drop shipped directly from the manufacturers. to the EMC sites. So, we've got, again, a lot of folks out there working on this issue, but not just the linemen, but all the support personnel that are helping them along the way. And one part of it I also want to talk about is that's the distribution side of our business. This has also been a transmission situation as well. So Georgia Transmission is the transmission provider and partner with Georgia Power and the other utilities on our transmission network in the state of Georgia. So they had a lot of outages as well, serving EMC load as of this morning. They've got 90% of the transmission that's serving EMC points out there restored. Now, we'll say that last 10% that they're going to be getting on are in some of the most remote and heavily damaged areas. So the recovery on that's probably not going to be quite as fast. So this has been for us and for the other utilities a parallel effort, not just on the distribution side, but on the transmission side of the business as well. In terms of how long is it going to take for us to get 100% restored? I will tell you that's a difficult question for us to answer. It's going to be certainly well into next week for most of these 11 systems, and it will be weeks beyond that for some of our consumers out there. I know that is not a welcome answer to tell folks, but that is the reality of the situation out there. Again, for us, there's reasons for that. I talked about our density a little earlier. So, in our case, obviously, we're like everybody else. We try to get the main feeder lines on, but then you get down to individual taps serving homes, businesses, and farms. You can have, 2 miles of a tap line that goes out that serves 2 people. And so they can work and get that back up, and it's only 2 customers going to get back on. So our numbers are not going to move quite as fast as probably folks would like. And then the other is just, again, the conditions that we're working in. In the best of circumstances, we tell people it takes a line crew 4 hours, maybe as much as 6 hours to replace a broken pole, get the infrastructure back up, get the conductor back up. That's in the best of conditions, and these are far from ideal conditions that they are working in right now. So, we really do appreciate the patience of our member consumers. I know that's hard. I know that wears thin very easily, and I completely understand that. We've got, a lot of our linemen that are out there working every day who've left their families at home who don't have any power. So, they're in that situation along with their member consumers out there. So, we want to get people's power restored as quickly as they want it restored, but we have to do that safely as well. We want to make sure that our crews that are out there working are safe, but also that the public is safe. And I'll reiterate what Georgia Power was saying is, you come across a downed line anywhere, consider that line to be energized. Even if you don't think it is, it could be, and just avoid it and then report it to us. And I'll give you some ways to report that information to us to a central place, and then we can get that out to the individual EMC out there. But we really appreciate the cooperation that we have gotten all across certainly from our member consumers, but from state and federal government, from the PSC, from local elected officials on down the line. So it's really been great turnout and a great team effort from all the utilities that we're all in this boat together. We all have our individual systems that we're working on, but at the end of the day, we're all in this boat together out there. So we'll give you a couple of ways to get in touch with us. So we have a consumer helpline that if anybody wants to report anything to us about your situation, that number is 855-816-9964. Or if you have email and you want to email us at info@georgiaemc.com. So if there's any questions I can answer, I'll be happy to answer.
Dennis.
Yes, sir, Commissioner.
In the northwest corner of the state, where it was basically rain, not a lot of wind, etc., what kind of relationship with TVA do our EMCs have there?
Oh, we have great relationship with TVA and those local distribution co-ops up there. There are 3 of them that are part of the TVA system. they have crews from them that are down in South Georgia working alongside the crews down there as well. So great relationship with them. And they had no damage up in that area.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions for Dennis?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Well,
First of all, Dennis, thank you to you and your folks, and we wish them all of them out there working that they remain safe. So many of the service providers in that telecom rely on this power. As your teams work street by street to restore electric service, are you or your EMCs coordinating with the cellular, telecoms, and cable companies so they know when to come behind you?
Yes, sir. We are trying our best to do that. It's probably not a perfect system, but I would say, if there's a case where we are not doing that, to contact us, and we will do our best to coordinate getting the EMC and that particular provider connected with one another.
All right. Thank you, sir. Again, keep safe out there.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, Dennis, if there's anything that we can do at the commission, as you know, always just give us a call if there's a way we can help coordinate anything or just be of any type of help. We'll continue to be thinking about you and your folks and all the thousands of folks out there working on behalf of other customers.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
Appreciate you taking the time to join us today too.
Happy to do that.
All right. Next, we'll go to Atlanta Gas Light Company.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Good afternoon, Chairman Shaw and Commissioners. I'm Steve Murphy. I serve as Senior Vice President of Engineering and Construction for Southern Company Gas and for Atlanta Gas Light. I also lead our company's incident support team, which coordinates our responses to natural disasters. I'm joined today by Dean Marianos. Dean's our Vice President of Operations for Atlanta Gas Light. His teams from across the state have been leading our efforts in restoring the system and helping support the other utilities. First of all, just like everybody else, we want to share our thoughts and prayers for everybody who was impacted by the storm. Certainly, most serious storm that we've seen in our territory, though it may not have impacted our system to a great extent. Certainly, it's impacted our communities and our customers and our employees and the whole state. So certainly our prayers are with everybody on that. As you know, we serve about 1.7 million customers in the state. We have a dedicated team of contractors, employees that help keep the system ready for those customers. Dean's going to go over a little more detail of what we've seen since the storm and how we've reacted and recovered from that. I think at a high level, it's worth noting that we were pretty fortunate overall. We saw minimal damage to the gas system. Most of what we witnessed were, individual homes and businesses that were damaged due to storm-related events, whether it was flooding or trees down and those kind of things, but nothing widespread impacting the gas system. So our focus right now is to continue to focus on restoring service to the customers as they're able to receive it, as they get their homes and businesses ready to receive gas again. But we're also continuing to assess our system, looking for more damages or anything we need to address. But a lot of our focus at this point is just to help support the other utilities and the communities as they recover from these efforts. So that's going to stay our main focus. Our number one value is, of course, the safety of our customers, our communities, and our employees. And that's where we'll continue to keep our attention in these coming weeks. But I'm going to let Dean go over some of the statistics for us and let you know kind of what our teams have been doing out there to help support the system. And we'll share at the end, what to do in case there is some sort of emergency or somebody smells gas and what we would love for the media to share with others. So, but with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dean.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Hey, good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Dean Marianos. As Steve said, I'm Vice President of Operations for Atlanta Gaslight. My team is responsible for the daily operations and maintenance of Atlanta Gaslight's gas infrastructure. So what I'd like to do is just give a quick update on our damage and restoration efforts. So we have two phases in our storm response that I'd like to discuss with you. First phase being the damage repair in the immediate aftermath of the storm. And the second phase is our restoration phase, and that's the phase we're actually in right now. But let me first discuss the immediate aftermath. While customers were affected, like a lot of people have already said, throughout all of our service areas, the largest concentration of damages for us were obviously in Augusta, Valdosta, Savannah, Jessup, and Vidalia. There were 1,100 total instances of individual damages to our system. It were primarily caused by uprooted trees damaging our main and service lines, and trees just simply falling on meters that were attached to homes and businesses. Now, all 1,100 of those damages have been made safe. Approximately 60% of those affected customers have also had their service restored. For the remaining 40% that we have made safe, we can't yet restore service because of the extent of other damages to those homes and businesses. Now, we stand ready to restore service to those customers once the customer is ready. They can call us at any time and we'll respond and restore their service, but we're also proactively visiting sites to see if they're ready in case they can't call us. We have and will continue to collaborate with the other energy providers throughout the state to coordinate our response with theirs to assure a safe process. Now, the next phase, which is the one, again, we're in now, is restoration. Now, we anticipate there are going to be additional damages to our system over the coming days and weeks due to the power being restored, tree removals, pole installation, debris clearing, all those things. But we have more than 150 people, both internal employees and Atlanta Gaslight contractors, which is about 4 times the normal number of folks that are just sitting in Augusta alone for that service center, assessing damage and restoring service. We continue working to identify any additional damage by using mobile leak detection in heavy damage areas. We're out there using ATVs in areas that are hard to access, and we even have an airplane that's assessing the damage in our right-of-ways. And we'll continue to deploy as many resources as needed until we're done. So finally, let me go over just a couple other ongoing support activities. Atlanta Gaslight will continue to temporarily suspend shutoff for not pay customers in these affected areas during this restoration period, and we'll evaluate at a later time and when the proper time is to resume this activity. We will continue to provide energy assistance programs through United Way to customers, and we've reached out to our marketers to request that they work with their customers to provide bill assistance and payment plans as well. We have provided and will continue to provide updates to key external stakeholders, local and regional state leaders, and key customers in the area. And we'll continue to do so again until everyone is restored there. So appreciate the opportunity. Let me provide this quick update. I want to turn it back over to Steve, and then both of us will answer questions at the end.
Hey, the only thing I want to add is about the safety reminder, and I think this has come up, of course, on the power side, and to share it on the gas side. If anyone suspects a natural gas leak, first thing, go to a safe location, and then either call 911 or you can call Atlanta Gaslight's 24-hour emergency line, which is 877-427-4321. That was 877-427-4321. With that, commissioners, we appreciate your time today and be happy to answer any questions. So.
Well, thank you, Steve, and thank you, Dean. Any questions?
Dean?
Go ahead.
Don McDonald here. Well, you talked about the disconnects AGL doesn't initiate a disconnect, though, does it?
That's correct. We do not.
All right. I wanted to make sure that that point was made, that you do not initiate the disconnect. It is done by the marketer.
That is correct, sir.
Dean and Steve, hey, I just want to hop in and say thanks. I'm glad that AGL's made the decision to not shut off folks for non-payment that are in the affected areas. I think we're seeing wide-scale mail issues and lack of internet accessibility, and it's going to be a challenge for some folks to be able to get bills paid at the mid-month point. So thank y'all very much. I think that was wise.
Thank you.
Good point. Good point. And thank y'all. I know I've had to call on y'all several times for folks calling me that have smelled gas leaks at affected areas, and y'all have been Johnny on the spot. So thank y'all. All right, we're going to move on in the essence
Hey,
of
Mr.
time.
Chairman.
Yeah, go ahead, Vince.
Just get just a quick one in. Thank you again, Dean and Steve, for participating today and all the work you're doing. Dean, you had mentioned that some of the customers, when they're not ready for restoration, and you guys are being proactive, can you give me an example of someone not ready to have their gas turned back on?
Yes, sir. Commissioner, a simple one would be a tree has fallen on someone's home, and they're not living in the home. We went out, we shut off the gas at their meter, maybe even removed the meter depending on the damage, and we're waiting on them to return back to their home.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you, sir.
All right, speaking of trees on home, that's my cousin's lake house behind me. Moving on next is folks from MEAG. We got David Weekly and we got Daryl Ingram from Electric Cities of Georgia. Thank y'all for being with us.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity to update the commission on the impact of the hurricane on MEAG Power System and the current status of our restoration. I'm David Weekly. I'm the Director of Transmission Operations at MEAG Power. I'm responsible for the O&M over the transmission part, the SCADA system, the metering, physical and cybersecurity, things like that. MEAG has about 135 employees. We serve 48 municipalities and one county that have their own retail electric distribution systems throughout the state. We call our customers participants. As a wholesale electric service provider to our 49 participants, the nature of the damage that we incurred was to the high voltage transmission lines and electric substations. A lot of it, like with the others, was caused by trees encroaching on the right-of-ways and the damage that resulted from that. Electric Cities of Georgia, Daryl that was called out, will be providing an update on the participants' electric distribution system restoration after I finish here with the MEAG part. The initial impact on MEAG Power Systems occurred on Thursday evening with a feeder breaker operation in a MEAG Power substation in South Georgia. By Friday morning, September the 27th, the impact of Hurricane Helene hit its peak on our system, which included 17 of our participants with system outages. 4 of those were entirely in the dark. All of their substations were out of service due to transmission outages. Another 16 substations in the other participant communities were out of service due to transmission line outages. And then 38 additional distribution feeder breakers were tripped offline in other substation locations. The distribution feeders are owned by the individual participants and deliver power from the substations to their retail customers. Our 4 participants losing electric service entirely were in the direct path of the hurricane. MEAG Power is an owner of approximately 1,300 miles of transmission line infrastructure that is part of the Georgia Integrated Transmission System, what we call the ITS. Georgia Power Company provides to MEAG transmission operations and maintenance service on the ITS. and they were principally responsible for restoring MEAG power transmission lines and substations back to service. But in addition to GPC's efforts, MEAG power participant communities and other maintenance contractors also provided support in clearing trees off transmission infrastructure, and our transmission staff, including construction and O&M coordinators, test engineers, electronic maintenance technicians, were all dispatched to support Georgia Power and Georgia Transmission's restoration efforts. All of the MEAG Power wholesale facilities, including the 4 communities who lost electric service entirely, were returned to service by noon on Tuesday, October the 1st. We appreciate the efforts of both Georgia Power Company and Georgia Transmission and the joint restoration effort that worked very well to get the lights back on. That's it for me. Do you have any questions?
Any questions?
Commissioner Knight, let me jump in and give you guys an update. I'm Daryl Ingram, Chief Operating Officer with Electric Cities of Georgia. I think many of you know Electric Cities of Georgia, or ECG. It's a statewide association for the 52 municipal owned, with one of those being in county, Crisp County. We're also responsible for coordinating the mutual aid assistance agreements with all of these cities and are deeply engaged in that as we speak. Of course, our areas of concentration will be similar to the other power companies. Of course, the geography really started through city of Thomasville, Quitman, up through Adel, Douglas, Fitzgerald, and then on through to Sandersville, Sylvania, Elberton, and Washington. Each of these utilities realized 80 to 100% outages at the time of the storm. And I'll give you a little information where we are today. Through ECG, we have prearranged mutual aid agreements with all of these utilities in the state. But we also have national mutual aid agreements with the American Public Power Association, which we use to expedite staging crews and dispatching crews around the state. To give you an idea, some of the states you've already heard. We've had 10 states that have assisted us as far as Massachusetts, Maryland, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Illinois, Indiana, but also Texas, Alabama, Kentucky, and Louisiana. Those crews are still in operation and through restoration today, actively trying to get the poles on. One of the challenges that we deal with that is different than the cooperatives is being municipal. We're condensed systems. And so we're short spans, a lot more services coming off the transformers and off the poles. Plus, we also have a lot of joint use poles with the other utilities and, of course, the telecom and cable providers. Of course, this adds a lot more complexity in restoring service in the municipal areas. Excuse me. In short, the process associated with this restoration, in our view, is really not a repair. We're in a rebuild stage, quite frankly, with these communities that I mentioned. I can report that collaboration with all utilities has been exceptional, very collaborative, because we're all working together with the EMCs, Georgia Power, and the telecommunication communities. It's worked very well. Except for the city of Douglas and the city of Fitzgerald, most restoration of single and three-phase primary should be concluded on Friday of this week. Again, homes and businesses that are experiencing damage to their electrical service entry points, we cannot connect those back until they have an electrician that comes in and repairs their service so that we can reconnect our service to them. And we're dealing with much of that. Douglas and Fitzgerald have had and experienced the most major damage of all of these. And we still have hundreds of men and women in those cities as we speak, working 24/7 to repair power. I can report as of this afternoon that Fitzgerald Utility Commission has about 85% of their power back on. They anticipate having all of their primary distribution back up this afternoon or sometime this evening. Douglas is a complete disaster zone, probably much like Commissioner Shaw and Valdosta, which is very similar. But Douglas, right at this point, has 50% of their power up. We anticipate that they're going to be working on restoration, even with their primary systems, through the first of next week in Douglas. And we have close to 200 people on the ground in Douglas with crews, as I mentioned, from all over the country. We do not have any firm numbers. Again, all of our utilities are individual, but we have lost a lot of transformers and, of course, poles. It's been significant. We have not experienced any supply chain issues whatsoever. Poles are being delivered. We're also a member of Gresco that Dennis mentioned earlier. Gresco has been a great partner in moving material, and they were ready for this storm. Each of our utilities have unique contacts. If anyone runs into any challenges, they can contact ECG through ecoga.org, and we can make those connections to get anything taken care of. That concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Well, thank you, Daryl. Yeah, and I knew Douglas and everything in between here and there, Pearson. It's just like you said it exactly. It's a true disaster zone.
It is.
Any questions?
Daryl, it's Tricia. Thank you very much for making the time, and thank you always for caring for it and working for the municipals. Is there a phone number that could be used across the state? Maybe a 1-800 number that people could use, or should they contact their local government?
Well, they should contact their local government, because in our case, we're dealing with local governments. But if they have a problem, because they are still in a fire drill, and most, especially in Douglas and Fitzgerald, they can contact 770-661-2784. And we will be happy to, and we're getting those calls right now. I've already received several of them, and we're getting them to the right people. And it's interesting. We've got a lot of folks around the state from South Georgia that are calling and asking how they can get their families' farms back on and houses back on. So we're dealing with that, and happy to help with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Commissioner McDonald.
While we've covered the waterfront on our electric utilities in the state, which they've all done a magnificent job under the circumstances, I want to thank my colleagues over the past few years and many years, that what behind the scenes that a lot of people don't know about, but we have fought an RTO from coming in, making a regional transmission organization, because were we under that umbrella, we would be talking to some board of directors in New York or somewhere like that to make sure that these decisions that are being made. And Trish and I have talked about this many times. And sometimes, you know, I go back to the book of Bubba, he who did not toot at his own horn, the same shall remain in the state of untootedness. Well, that's tooting the horn for your Georgia Public Service Commission, that we have abstained from any of that type of national programs, the RTO. Thank you.
Well said. Any other questions? All right, we'll move on. Thank you, David and Daryl, and Godspeed for everybody out there on your teams. Next is Municipal Gas Authority, Scott Tollison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You hear me okay?
Very well, thank you.
Thank you. Just want to introduce myself. I'm Scott Tollison with the Municipal Gas Authority of Georgia, Chief Membership Officer. We work with 79 of the there's 79 operators in Georgia, municipal gas systems. We work with 67 of those. We've been in contact with the other 12 during this storm, but unlike our electric partners, the gas systems have survived pretty well. Even though you heard some municipal electric systems who also have natural gas systems in the Douglas Fitzgerald area, those natural gas systems have fared pretty well down there. You know, with the power being out, of course, there's limited natural gas usage, which is, you know, we'll take that as long as everybody's safe and sound. We did have one issue in Louisville, Georgia. Their system had an uprooted tree that came across their main line and really disrupted almost their whole system. They lost 500 of their 700 customers. As of this afternoon, about half of those have been restored. That system is repaired. But like the Atlanta Gas Light reported, we're seeing individual gas customers that have had localized damage, maybe a tree on a meter or a tree on a house or something where we have a few outages. But other than that, this system really, when it jogged to the east, it hit some systems that really weren't expecting it, but they fared fairly well compared to our partners on the electric side. You know, as we think about the mutual aid agreements, we've been working with Georgia Municipal Association's gas section to make sure we have mutual aid agreements in place. And Louisville has been aided by Fort Valley, Lawrenceville, Statesboro, and Austell, Georgia. And also Hartwell has helped them out. And so all those systems have been working together to make sure they're restoring service where they can. First of all, they got to make sure that these systems aren't leaking, and then they go back and get customers back on the system. So we have fared fairly well with this storm. Unfortunately, you know, we see it on the power side. We will have some issues show up when people start going home, turning their appliances back on, and we start getting those services turned back on. But as of now, I would say the municipal gas systems have held up pretty well. Of the 350,000 total customers on municipal gas in Georgia, we've had just a few hundred outages, and those are being worked on as we speak. And we expect Louisville's system to be fully restored by tomorrow afternoon. On the contacting any emergency contacts, we first ask customers to dial 911, and that 911 will then direct to the emergency contacts in the individual gas systems. If that doesn't work, they can call the local phone numbers for their local gas system, or they can call us here at the Gas Authority at 770-590-1000.
Thank you very much, Scott. Any questions? Well, again, same thing to what we've said about everybody else. Just we're thinking about all you folks out there still working, and appreciate the job y'all are doing. Thank you very much.
One last thing, Mr. Chairman. One thing we discovered that it's a good thing we didn't get rid of some of our two-way radio communications. Those came in handy in East Georgia. So we had some sitting in drawers that were able to be used over in the Louisville area during this event. So that helped us out.
Yeah, I talked to an EMA director in one of these rural counties yesterday that told me that he ended up during that period, he had a friend that had a ham radio, and was able to get him to send some messages out for him on a ham radio. So that's a true story.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all for having this.
Thank you. All right, we got Josh Morris on from GMA. GMA, Georgia Municipal Association. All right. We'll move on. Liberty Utilities, Bobby Avery.
Hey, good afternoon, commissioners.
Hey, Bobby, how you doing? Thank you for being with us.
You're doing well. Hey, thank you for allowing Liberty Utilities to participate in this session. My name is Bobby Avery. I am the Director of Operations for Liberty. My responsibilities include maintaining system reliability and quality of customer service. We provide natural gas service primarily to the greater Columbus and Gainesville area of the state. Combined, we have 96 employees and about 62,000 customers. Our heart goes out to the communities that was most impacted by the storm. And like most utilities, Liberty prepared days in advance, and we had hourly updates with our field employees to ensure safety was at the forefront. And at the same time, making sure that our teams have the necessary essentials they needed for their own families. As most people know, if you look at the storm, Columbus was well out of the storm path. In Gainesville, there was over 150 road events, that had to be cleared and intermittent power law issues. Fortunately, our service area was spared when the storm turned east, and we are reporting that we have no substantial damage to our facilities or any customer loss. Thank you, commissioners, for all that you do in your role in the economic development and your support for robust utility infrastructure in the state. I will, as listening to these calls, look, Liberty does extend an olive branch for anything that we can do to help in this situation. So.
Thank you, Bobby, and especially thank you for that last comment. That means a lot. And there's been a lot of that, and there will continue to be. All right, next we've got AT&T, Rich Johnson. Rich, are you with us?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, commissioners. So I know that the cellular coverage has certainly been a challenge for a lot of folks, as you well mentioned. I just want to kind of go through a little bit about what we've done leading up to the storm, and then kind of what's been done as we have begun to restoration efforts. But just for the record here, my name is Rich Johnson with AT&T. I handle our legislative, regulatory activities, as well as liaison with many of our elected officials and the state of Georgia. As you guys know, it has been said many times, right? This certainly was one of the biggest impacts that we've seen to the state, that we've seen, around the country for that matter, with respect to the impact that it's had on our network and the impact that it's had to our community. What we initially did to prepare, right? We have one of 5 natural disaster recovery facilities in the country located just outside of Atlanta. This houses all of our disaster response equipment, all of our deployables, all of our generators, all these variety of different pieces of equipment that's already right here in Georgia to date. But we go and we set those stations out in kind of strategic places, kind of looking at where the storm's going to move, make sure that they're all ready to go, and are in kind of strategic docking areas for us to deploy and begin to set up after the storm has moved through. So we had everything from mobile cows or cell on wheels. We had Colts, which are cell on light trucks, emergency communication vehicles. We had flying cell on wings, or what's called flying cows, high water vehicles, amphibious all-terrain vehicles, and drones, as well as we've got a self-sufficient base camp for our AT&T recovery personnel to coming in from other states to be able to help. This base camp is got everything from sleeping quarters, bathrooms, kitchen, laundry. It's got an on-site nurse, meals ready to go. You name it. This includes hazmat equipment and everything from technology to other semi-trailers to provide infrastructure support, mobile ventilation, and the like. So everything that you can really think of, we set in pre-staged places, and then go ahead and begin to place at cell sites where there's not a fixed generator. We go ahead and do a pre-deploy some portable generators to the places that seem to be in the biggest impact. Certainly, like many of our providers here, we've had a number of our employees have had damages to their own home, their own property, but they've been up working hard since the storm came through, and really working around the clock. We've had hundreds of other folks from other crews from other states come into Georgia to help support our recovery efforts, from Florida, from Alabama, et cetera, all come in to support this work. And a lot of it is once the storm moves through, we then move into the area, set up this logistical support centers. This is really kind of think of a work center where it's got equipment, generators, spare parts, fuel, all of the stuff all ready to go, really in the hardest hit areas to maximize its impact. And then we've deployed these mobile lodging trailers, as I've mentioned. We've also turned up a number of hotels that are actually without power. We put generators at them in support of them so we can house our employees at a few hotels over in the Augusta area. But once the storm moves through, one of the first things that we do is our FirstNet Response Operations Group, which is our public safety network. They're within hours. They're right at the heart of the storm, and work seamlessly to provide communication that is dedicated for public safety. So where there is no communication, and where we have a FirstNet customer, FirstNet agency, right now we've had over 40 different requests from various public safety entities, everyone from GEMA and Department of Public Safety all the way down to local EMAs and police, fire, et cetera, that have asked for things like the Colts, the compact radio deployables, which are kind of like stationary Colts, if you will, generators, so that they're able to make cell phone calls when there is no service, when the tower is down. This has been, we've heard a lot of great stories from folks that have not been able to connect, would not otherwise been able to connect without this. But this is obviously essential when, especially right after these storms, for first responders to be able to communicate and potentially, save lives. Just kind of broadly speaking, with respect to the impact of the storm, Governor Kemp requested roughly 90 counties to receive federal disaster assistance. We provide wireline terrestrial service in at least a portion of 58 of those 90 counties that he had initially requested. And then obviously we provide wireless service throughout the whole state. With most hurricanes, we did have some significant infrastructure impact everywhere from Valdosta all the way up through Augusta. The things like fiber optic, backhaul transports that were impacted. We had impact to cell towers, buildings, and all kinds of other facilities. Just like many others here have talked about. But once the commercial power was kind of lost at certain locations, we were able to turn up fixed generators on those cell sites that, if they had them, backup batteries, and any of the pre-deployed generators were able to turn up and keep those particular cell sites up. But where we have issues such as fiber outages or fiber cuts, or where after the storm we were trying to get a generator to that cell site, but didn't have access to the actual location, those are the ones that we have seen not have service. But we've been working since the get-go, and from all the sites that we initially had down, now 84% of all those sites have been restored back to normal. And then as power and access, we're able to get back in there and power is turned up. We're able to determine, is it a transport issue for those 84% of those sites that are left. We've made a lot of progress in places like Camden and Glenn counties, and even some significant progress where things are almost back to or completely back to 100% covered in places like Burke, Hancock, and even Richmond County, which are some of the more harder hit areas. Right now, from some of our main areas that we're really trying to focus on, we're continuing to see challenges in places like in Appling County, Clinch County, Coffee, Montgomery, Tatnall, to name a few. And we're working with whether it is it's another provider that does the transport. We're working to ensure that whatever issue may occur within their network to bring that site up, or if it's an access issue, we've been working with GMA, with GDOT to get clearance or move whatever may be blocking our ability to get to that site. With respect to 911, many of our communities had some degree of impact to their 911 PSAPs. Some of this infrastructure, was really as a result of us having to reroute calls. And so right now, of all the ones that were impacted, 96% of those are now back to operating as business as usual. But I want to point out that of that 4% that remains, they're still receiving emergency calls. They can still be dialed to the PSAPs. The only thing that's being done is that they either have been rerouted, their calls have been rerouted to another PSAP, or that they are not receiving some of the location information, but calls are still able to go through. So, and then I also want to touch on some of the in-home internet for folks. So with respect to people's in-home services, as power comes back on and as we're able to restore our network, just want to remind folks that when you get back to your house, if you're not already there, you may find that you have some in-home issues with respect to booting back up, if you will, your network. Please send in a ticket. We're responding to those and dispatching technicians to help respond to those. And I'll go through some of the contact information here at the end. But we are not necessarily aware of some of those issues that may happen on your side or the in-home side, at least not initially. Without some of that, we're trying to fix the transport, the connectivity to a constituent or customer's particular house at this moment. But we have started to see an uptick in some of those where fiber has turned back up. But it's also important to note that so before our crews can go in to do any of our fiber restorations, we gotta let Georgia Power, gotta let the EMCs and the like get through and turn those areas up so that it's safe for our technicians to go out there. Obviously, you don't want to have them working on poles when it's about to be energized. That certainly wouldn't be a good thing. So we are working closely with our power providers to ensure that they're giving us the list of where they have been, which substations they've turned up, which ones they have moved on to next, that we can follow behind as closely as possible. This helps really try to make sure that we're as efficient as possible with respect to our restoration, which generally follows, like I said, follows right behind them. But I do want to point out one of the challenges that we are continuing to see, even as recent as today, is that we've gone through, we've made repairs, we've reconnected, backhaul transport, and then facilities are then later damaged and cut, only requiring us to go back, have to go redo the work that's already been done. This is a real challenge when depending on which fiber you cut, you could have cell service, and then all of a sudden something is cut and you take down a number of sites. So these facilities, when they're placed and kind of in a temporary status, we're putting markers on them and flags on them to try and bring some notice so that folks don't necessarily cut them, but really want to emphasize just how important it is as this cleanup work continues, that if you see a fiber line or see a telecom line down, do not cut it. This could in many cases this can be very disruptive, and sometimes we've already fixed it. I can think of a couple instances, one in Appleton County where it literally was cut 3 times, the same spot 3 times, and we've had to go back there and repair it 3 separate times. So all this does is just kind of slow down the progress. It's certainly not something that anybody wants. But I will leave you with kind of, we've got, we have sent some charging stations to some of the shelters in the area, so that folks that are staying in shelters in Valdosta area or Augusta area are able to, charge their phone or their devices. And we are working with customers on a individual basis if they have overages on their cell phones. Once they're able to have connect, we're waiving all those overages through the end of the month here. And then if you have any questions or issues, customers can reach out to us at 1-800-288-2020, 24/7 for support. Our retail stores are open. The only ones that there's a little bit of a limited hours are in the Valdosta area where they've got a curfew currently. But where the stores can be open, they're all currently open and able to accept anybody's questions or help that they may need. So, but I just want to thank commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. Happy to answer any questions, and happy to see how we can help.
Well, thank you, Rich. Any questions?
Thank you, Rich. Hey, I know we've gotten lots of calls about cell towers that are down or cell towers that do not have electricity. I believe AT&T has been making sure that cell towers have generators. And talk us through a little bit more about that work, please.
Yes, ma'am. So when a cell site is down, oftentimes if it doesn't have a fixed generator, then we are going and trying to deploy a portable generator to that site. There's a substantial amount of work that's going on currently, given how long we're in this state. I know all this work is being done, but we're having to go back to refuel these generators. There are times when generators run out of fuel. We actually brought in tens of thousands of gallons of gas from outstate into the state to make sure that we were prepared so we could do that. We don't have any fueling needs or any issues with respect to being able to refuel them. It's just we're literally going out and individually checking on each one of these sites to make sure they have enough fuel. They generally last a couple of days before they need to be refueled. But as we make those, they're up, and as long as those sites have power, that they should be operating. For folks to be able to make calls and the like. We do work with, some of our other wireless carriers where we're the backhaul provider, we're the third party fiber transport. We're making sure that we're managing their tickets as they have come in. So if another wireless provider has an outage and where we're the transport, we're fixing their stuff so that they also can able to turn their stuff up as well. So it's really been a team effort. It's a lot of organized chaos, but it's certainly been a team effort, and it's going to be one that's going to take time. There's no doubt it's going to take a lot of time.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you, Rich. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Next we've got Rhonda Chatham from Georgia's Rural Telephone and Broadband Association.
Hey, good afternoon, Chairman. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, we got you, Rhonda. How are
Okay,
you?
good. Well, I'm doing pretty good, and we have some good news and some bad news, kind of like everybody else, but I'll just go through it. I am Rhonda Chatham, the executive director of the GTBA, which is all the 22 rural telephone and broadband providers across the state. Our members are, many of them are kind of right in the heart of where this storm hit really hard. So we do serve a good many of those territories. For this particular storm, we have 13 companies currently who have damage or outage. Those companies are Alma, ATC Broadband as well, Brantley, Bullock, ComSouth, Darien, Glenwood, Pembroke, and Pac Fiber, Pineland, True Vista, Planners, Progressive Rural, TDS, and Wilkes Reliant. And all of them do currently have some outage. There's 62 communities. I'll kind of forgo reading those. And if anybody wants to know any particular ones, I'll go back to, I'll be happy to tell you where those are. But I would say the majority of our damage is just power related. Once power gets restored, our members should be able to come back up. These plants, for the most part, are buried, which is a good sign because that they weren't cut in the storm with trees falling, that sort of thing. But we do have some aerial plant that was much like the electric companies that was completely destroyed. And so as a membership, we right now currently have right around 4,000 customers that are out due to aerial plants that will have to be rebuilt. And so as far as the damage itself, we did have, some outages, like I said, for the aerial plant, but we've also, once power has been restored, we have had a few card failures and those trouble tickets. They've been answering those as they come in. Also, just some simple things like Rich said, people have had to just reset their routers, and then they've been back online once they got power. I guess our biggest struggle and hurdle has been the propane for the generators, just continuous use of generators over this long period of time and having to find propane. Of course, we've had a great resources as well. We've, our members as a whole have helped each other out. We've also had connections with the Georgia Propane Association where, we'll call in and they will tell us who the closest provider is to bring out propane for those generators. One of the other issues that we've had with generators is looting. You have a generator, you have it loose, and all of a sudden, communities, we have had some theft on generators that are running facilities right now. The other issues that we've had, and most of these have been resolved. I only know of one that has not, and Rich kind of touched on it, some tandems and leased and shared routes that are, they'll isolate our members. And so the customers in that area, if they do have service, they wouldn't be able to call 911, things like that. So we've been working with our other telecom providers to resolve those as quick as we can. We is talking about resources that we've used, GEMA and JICA. They have been great. One of the first things that we did as an organization is worked with JICA to make sure that all of the 911 centers were up and that our customers were able to call in to those, the ones that did have service. And we worked through those also to see about different routes that some of the PSAPs needed, things like that, if they needed anything. And we did a great deal of work early on with JICA. We talking about the cell towers, we do have some fiber that is running to cell towers that's being, kept up with generators as well. And we've been working specifically on one site today with Georgia Power to get actual power to that rather than running on generator. I would say one suggestion that we might want to consider, as much as everyone has talked about communications and needing to be up, is maybe put some sort of priority on some of these sites where generators are having to run for long periods of time. So just wanted to throw that out. And also our networks, the offices that are there, maybe get them to where if their offices are up, they're not running on generators so long, especially if they are providing for, hospitals and 911s, things like that. Like I said, we have the 4,000 customers that are out. Those estimations, obviously, they've got to come in behind the power companies. So the estimations we're looking at are 4 to 6 weeks, which I know is not what people want to hear, but these areas, as many have said, are devastated. There's not much left standing, and it's all going to have to be rebuilt. So we are working, with those providers, either if we share a line with an EMC or we have our own aerial plant. Like I said, the good news is most of our plant was buried. So when commercial power comes back up, people should have internet in areas that our members serve. As far as the non-payment, just in polling our members, most of them have, they have stopped any sort of disconnect towards the end of October. Some of them, though, are looking at it to see what they need to do based on the number of non-payments that they've had. But on a good note there, our companies are reporting that customers are paying. So that's a good sign. As far as contacts, each one of these companies, much like the EMCs, they're individually owned. And the good news is they're embedded in their communities and their customers know them, so they know their contacts. But for anyone watching, if you are having an issue by one of our companies and you can't get them, I'll throw out my email, which is Chatham, and that's CHATHAM @gtba.org. And you can email me and let me know which area of the state you're in, and I'll connect you with your provider. I'd be happy to do that. One of the other issues that we have had, and I don't want to be too long on this, but I mean, you were talking about, direct things, but the indirect things have been, providing grocery stores that don't have power and being able to provide for, the workers that are out there working as well as the communities, but mainly, for the workers. And then gas stations, if they don't have a bulk system of supply for gas, being able to get gas for their trucks that are working. And then the last thing is I would echo Rich's sentiments on lines that are being cut. We know power's got to go up. We know it's got to go up quick. But when you've already repaired a fiber that, may have been a simple repair, and then to have to come back in and repair it when it's, maybe it's providing service to an essential area that does provide kind of a struggle for our members to go back and resplice that. So if there's a way that we can do better on communicating those lines, we'd certainly be open to that. And that's really all I have. I'll take any questions.
Well, thank you, Rhonda. Do we have any questions?
And I do have our members. Most of them are on here. So if you have any questions about any particular area that you've got complaints about, please let us know and they'd be happy to answer.
Yeah, you've got a bunch of good folks on the Zoom with us, and I know we don't have time for everyone, but I saw the list, so just want to say thank you to each and every one of you in these affected areas for what y'all are doing. And what Rhonda said about how embedded you all are in your communities is so true, and that's so important in times like this, particularly as we all work together to, what one of the things that's been amazing to me is to see how everyone has worked to prioritize the essentials, the hospitals, the government offices, the gas stations, and the first 2 days just trying to find a gas station, it was wild to see some of the lines and just the amount of volunteers and nonprofits out there as well has been extraordinary. Any questions? Well, thank you, Rhonda. Okay, next we've got Verizon. We've got several folks, so I'm just going to call on Verizon, let y'all come in the order that you want.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. This is Mark Pack from Verizon. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, Mark, we got you good.
Okay, thank you. So again, my name is Mark Paff, and I lead the business continuity and crisis management team for Verizon. I want to first start by expressing our heartfelt concern over the damage, the destruction, and the disruption to the lives, the citizens, and communities impacted by this storm. Verizon takes this very seriously, and we're working nonstop to restore communication services as quickly as possible. Let me first start by explaining what my team's role is in preparing for and responding to an incident like this storm. This starts with monitoring global incidents that have the potential to impact Verizon operations and services. We were actually monitoring and preparing for this storm long before it was even named. We put the storm on the company on alert once it looked like it was going to impact the U.S., and we officially activated our crisis management team just prior to it making landfall. In this pre-activation phase, we were able to prepare for the storm by staging people and assets, securing our employees and facilities, and hardening the network and putting vendors on standby. Once activated, all of the units within Verizon are engaged to focus our responses in a coordinated way. To name a few of the units that we have engaged, we've got our field operation teams, our network management centers, our HR centers, state government affairs, state and county EOC liaisons, federal liaisons, our global supply chain, finance. All of these units are part of Verizon, and they were activated and engaged in responding to this in a coordinated way. This allows us for internal coordination as well as for coordination externally. And while we're activated, we're meeting twice a day to assess the impacts and coordinate response and bring up any concerns. And those meetings continue even right now. We're meeting right now. I also want to talk to you about some specialty teams that we have that we get engaged for these kinds of incidents. One of those teams is called our DIRT team. That is our Dedicated Impact Response Team. These are technicians that are specially trained for bringing communication services up quickly in hard-hit areas. They are specialists in what we call our mobile network assets. So these are our cells on wheels. We have what we call the barnyard animals. We have colts, cells on wheels. We have bison, steers. These are a variety of network assets that we're able to bring into a hard-hit area and quickly restore communications until we can do physical repair of our network. They are very active, engaged in the Georgia area and bringing communication services back up. We also have our MERIT team. That's our Major Emergency Response Incident Team. This is a team of individuals whose day job is to repair, grow, and maintain our networks, but we are trained them to be hazmat technicians. So if you have a hazmat situation in an area that needs communications repair, rather than waiting for the area to be secured and hazard-free, with their training, they're able to go in special PPE equipment, go in and safely repair and bring communication services back up quickly. We also have our frontline team. These are individuals that are trained for bringing solutions to first responders. These are former first responders themselves, and they're embedding themselves with first responder teams to bring them communication solutions, to do missions and safety and search and rescue activities. We also have our ERT, our Emergency Response Team, whose work is on bringing power up to our facilities, refueling, and doing fiber damage repair. We also have operations for community outreach. So currently we have a mobile wireless emergency communications center in Augusta. It's at the Augusta Mall at 1630 Gordon Highway. In there, we're able to help the community by providing Wi-Fi coverage. We've got laptops and Chromebooks that the citizens can use. We have charging stations for portable devices, phones for up to 100 people to really keep and provide that support for the community. And we're also supplying bottled water in some of our retail stores. So we brought 8 pallets of water to Augusta, 2 into the Valdosta stores. And within the next 24 hours, we should have water delivered to Evans, Vidalia, Tifton, Augusta again, and Valdosta. And through our crisis management team, we organize logistics for our technicians that are on the ground. We provide for them food, water, sleeping accommodations, so that they're able to quickly respond and stay in the areas that are hard hit where they don't have those amenities, keep them safe, and they're able to quickly restore communications for the communities. For customers wanting to reach out to Verizon and contacts for any inquiries, you can reach us at 800-922-0204 or contact us at verizon.com. And at this time, I'm going to turn over to Leo Peralt, who is our Vice President of Operations in the Southeast for Verizon, who's coming to you from our Emergency Operations Center in Alpharetta and is going to give you a more detailed view into our network restoration. So, Leo?
Yeah, thank you, Mark, and thank you to the Commission for having us today. I'm going to jump right into a little bit about the damage that we, saw, as well as the restoration efforts that are, continuing as we speak. So our network was impacted pretty much in the same footprint as everyone else that you've heard from here today, with, especially saw impact in Southeast Georgia, in Valdosta and Waycross and Vidalia, Fitzgerald, Douglas, and everywhere in between, as well as, of course, in Augusta, which we've heard several times today was, significantly impacted by the storm. So, the basics that I think are pretty clear by now, since we've had several people talking. Our network is a very, very complex network, but at the base of it all, we have to have power and we have to have transport to connect our towers and our cell sites back to our switches. And, that can happen a couple different ways, but the vast majority of our connectivity is through fiber optic network. We do have some microwaves, scattered throughout our network, and they too can provide backhaul, but normally they would drop down onto the fiber network at some point geographically within our network. So very important to have the combination of both the power and the fiber. So we are continuing to see improvements with both power and fiber, and we really appreciate and want to thank the others here on the call that we partner with to provide that service to us. As an example, some of the progress that we've seen just in the last 24 hours, we've seen over 50 macro cell sites come back in service. So, we've continued to see progress, but that's a really good day where we can see 50 of them come back just in 24 hours. So thank you to our partners there. Our top priority when a disaster hits like this, and Mark may have briefly mentioned it, is to, make sure that we're providing for the first responders and ensuring that, we restore their operations and assist them with any search and rescue efforts that may be ongoing and needed. We're in regular communications with the Georgia Emergency Management Agency as well as county emergency operations centers. If I talk briefly about our temp solutions and power just for a little bit more. So we have roughly 50 temporary solutions providing what I would call connectivity, kind of replacing that fiber optic connectivity that you've heard me talk about. Mark mentioned that could come through cows and colts, pico cells, we call them. We have drones that are flying small cell sites over an area that might be in need of a search and rescue effort. We have mini cells that we deploy on trailers. So, those continue to be deployed as we speak. At the peak of the storm, we had over 700 generators running, providing power to our cell sites, waiting on commercial power and fiber to be restored. So it turns into a significant logistical exercise that you already have heard a little bit about today to provide the refueling for those generators. We're working 24/7 to make sure that these generators stay fueled and that they don't, turn off because of a lack of fuel. That's the worst thing in the world that can happen in a situation like this. So we've completed thousands of what we call site surveys. These site surveys are geared to make sure that we have eyes on a site. So we send technicians, engineers out to every single one of the sites that are impacted to make sure that we fully understand the impact of the storm on that site. It may just be power or it may just be fiber. It could be that the tower is on the ground. And we have had a couple situations where we are going to have to bring in temporary towers to replace the towers that actually were damaged and or completely destroyed. So those site surveys are very key in our ability to communicate with the partners here online so that we know exactly what is going to be required in order to bring that cell site back online. So a lot going on in that space. Nearly 90% of the cell sites here in Georgia have a permanent backup generator. Of course, that's prior to the storm. And all of our cell sites have backup batteries. Those cell sites that don't have a generator but do have batteries, they're going to only last anywhere from, potentially 8 to 20 hours, just depending on the load that is on that particular tower. But we do have that massive refueling operation underway, continuing as we speak. We've used over 147,000 gallons of fuel so far, refueling our generators since the storm began. So it's a massive effort. That's where we use a lot of contractors. You're going to hear me talk about kind of our internal employee source in a minute, but we bring in a significant contractor base that is, running around and doing all of the refueling. We procure that fuel in advance before the storm. We have it staged across our network in key locations to make sure that we have easy access, as easy as possible access to that fuel, both diesel for the generators as well as unleaded for all the trucks that are delivering the fuel and all of our engineer and technician trucks that have to run in a situation like this. So a massive logistical operation in addition to the fuel, the feeding, the sleeping, the quarters, getting water, food for our teams and the community. We do have over 230 employees supporting this effort here in Georgia. They've come from all over the U.S. I was speaking with an engineer just last night that was down from New York and had been here for 5 days. So we're bringing technicians and engineers from everywhere we need to. Obviously, we have to have the work for them to do. We have to have a well-coordinated effort. 45 employees are working here in our command center in Alpharetta, Georgia. and we also have employees in the state local emergency operations centers. So as I'm indicating, just a really large operation. Just to quickly address timing of the restoration. I mean, obviously, you know that, and you've heard throughout this call, it's all about the power and the fiber. We were very fortunate in that a lot of our assets did not necessarily take a lot of damage. So our buildings, our cabinets, a few tower impacts, but we fared very well from our own internal communications assets that are deployed in the field. So we were very excited about that. As the power and the fiber is restored, the good thing about, from this phase forward is we will then redeploy those assets that were being used to other cell sites that may still be in trouble. So this will, allow us to continue to move assets around the network to try and maximize uptime for our network. So that continues as we speak, and we are already taking generators from certain cell sites and redeploying them to other cell sites as the power is being restored. I think one of the things that was talked about was what kind of challenges or what kind of asks do we have of the commission? And, similar to what you heard before, we are very worried. Want to be very careful. We would love your help in communicating the impact on our fiber and, of course, power as restoration efforts happen. So we want to make sure that people are using the 811 to call before you dig, but also to make sure that they're clear that, any cable on the ground, even though they may validate it's not power, we want to make sure that they're very careful around any cables, because if they do cut that cable either through heavy equipment, moving trees that are on the side of the road, or just citizens that are trying to clean up their yard, if they cut that cable, it could take down 10, it could take down 20 cell sites just by one cut. And that will impact, of course, everybody's ability to call 911. So we'd appreciate, we're taking our efforts, but we would love to see you support us in that effort to communicate the impact on restoration during the cleanup phase of this storm. So thank you again for having us today. Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you, Mark. And you definitely can count on us if there's anything that we can do to help coordinate or help you communicate with anybody that's affected. And we understand this is going to take a while, but what you all provide in terms of connectivity is essential. Like I said earlier, and I don't think we've ever realized that any more than we do, or than how we've learned this week, or since,
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Friday morning.
Did you ask that?
Any questions? Go ahead.
Did you ask that engineer that came from New York, did he want to stay or go back to New York?
That's what's interesting. We have our internal credo that we take very seriously, but they live for this. Not that they want it to happen. They love to come in and help. They love to come in and make a difference. And I asked him, when are you heading back? And he said, not till it's done. So
that's great. Yeah. Thank you.
Leo and Mark, Central Command on Shore Response in Georgia's in Dublin. You all mentioned that you're working out of an office in Alpharetta. Who do you have down on site in Dublin? You've got 230 people that are Verizon employees working on this storm response. I would assume you got folks at Central Command in Dublin.
Yes, ma'am, we do. Obviously, we're working on the area itself, but our government support team is there with them, making sure that we have their priorities and know exactly where they feel like we need to address, concerns that they may have. So we absolutely are tied in.
So you all talked quite a bit, but I missed in all that the outages that you had, and so you all understand Verizon is the company that we've probably received the most inquiries about because of the footprint that you have in South Georgia. How many affected customers, cellular customers or mobile customers, do you have? What plans are in place in terms of helping them with their bills this month if they've not been able to receive Verizon service since the storm happened? Will their bills be prorated? Talk us through some specifics if you would.
Yeah, I don't have the customer specifics on the quantity of customers that are impacted. As we turn the cells up, of course, that are receiving coverage every day, it's improving. As far as the what are we doing for them? I mean, we are working very closely, and we've already taken steps to provide data, text, and call relief for these customers in the 77 impacted counties. And it's our standard protocol that we would never turn anyone off during this time, whether, they might be behind on a payment or anything else. So we've suspended all what you would consider normal operations of how we interface with our customers. But we're definitely providing the text and calling and everything else at this time for those customers.
Okay. So you're not shutting off for non-pay at this point?
We are not.
Is that statewide or just in the affected areas?
It's through the 77 impacted counties.
Okay. All right. When do you think that you could get us information on your total number of customers that are affected, or customers that, I have no way of knowing if the number's going down and how fast.
Yeah, as far as the
number's going down on customers needing their service restored.
Sure. We'll take as far as number of customers, we'll take that off and get back to you. But we're over 80% of our network has been restored at this point. So, we monitor it not only just by numbers, but of course, geographically. And the way we address that is we're looking to provide a coverage layer as quickly as we can. So when we select which cell sites we're going to go focus on and really work with the other providers here online, we really need fiber at this site, or we really need power at this site. It is all tied around a plan to make sure we provide a coverage layer. At any given time during a normal week, we have both capacity cell sites and we have coverage cell sites. And our first efforts are to make sure we have a good coverage layer so people can use the text and the voice calling. It may not provide a great opportunity for them to do video and heavy data usage, but we are absolutely focused on making sure that they can call and text. And so we're working hard to make sure we provide that coverage layer as quickly as possible everywhere in the state.
Thank you, Leo. Thank you, Mark.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have one, please.
Go ahead.
First of all, thank you, Mark, and we appreciate everything that Verizon is doing and contributions to the relief effort. These days having internet is almost as important, right up there, as having the power itself. If a customer has been re-energized, but the internet is still not working, what should your customers do or expect?
Yeah, so that's a good question, because restoring a cell, especially on some of our temporary satellite backhaul assets, is really geared to make sure that they can text and use voice calling, and the data is going to be secondary at this point, because the bandwidth that is required for all the heavy data usage that we've all come to know and love, it was really when we need that fiber connectivity to provide the level of bandwidth that's required. So the voice and the texting is really going to be first, but in an area where we're fully restored, if they're still having issues with their internet service, we would definitely want them to reach out to us through Verizon.com or the 800-922-0204 number into our service centers. That way we can kind of determine, is it storm impact related? Is it not?
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
All right. Anybody else?
I just have one question, Commissioner.
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Eccles.
This is now the third communication company that's mentioned about utilities or others maybe cutting their line. I wonder if there's some old school way that we could do this, maybe with a green piece of plastic tape or something on these communication lines, that when they've been spliced and repaired, just tie that onto it as a sign that this line has been repaired. That may be just too simple and obviously too difficult to make happen now. But I just wonder if I could hear from any of the communication companies about whether there is some kind of old school way that we could do this to keep from damaging your lines, in one case 3 different times in Appling County. So could each of you chime in maybe?
Commissioner, hey, I'm happy to answer that. So right now that occurs already. In fact, there is some orange and white sticker that says, this is fiber. Do not cut. Do not damage it. They put it at various intervals, along the fiber. It's not a perfect system, right? I think what's happening here is you've got trees down, you've got brush, all kinds of stuff, and as things are being moved and out of the street, out of the right of way, right? It's they're not seeing. I mean, obviously, no one's doing it intentionally. I don't think that's. I don't think it's that. It's just you're getting stuff that folks are trying to move through, get these things cleared quickly. This is. I don't say it's normal for hurricane restoration for this to happen. It does happen in the past. It's just right now it seems like it's just happening at a much larger tick than it has in previous storms. So, we've spoken with GEMA, with the state EOC. They've been sharing this with other state agencies as well, just trying to help communicate it. It's kind of one of these things where I think that post storm maybe we can think of some ideas to do things differently. But right now, your idea, which was a great one, is being done.
I'll also mention that we're in close contact with our locating companies. So we encourage everybody, if anybody's doing any kind of dig activities, please call the 811 system. We're coordinating very closely so that they can get out as quickly as they can to mark the area where any kind of excavation is going to be done. So that's the process where they put the orange, at least for communications, the orange stakes and the orange paint on the ground to identify them. So we are trying our best to make sure that the whole industry that's involved with the fiber optics and the other utilities as well are utilizing the 811 process.
And I think education with the teams that are on the ground of what's happened and can happen as well would be helpful.
Commissioner Eccles, I would kind of echo it, but also, you have to imagine you've got a lot of this power that is down and a lot of the fiber is on poles, utility poles as well. And so as they're clearing their right of ways, I mean, obviously they're just trying to get it up as quick as they can. So I sympathize with them. But then, sometimes in order to get it up as quick as you can, you just cut through fiber. And we don't know necessarily where that fiber is supplying. So I don't know if there's a way, and I honestly don't know what the MCs or any power companies that have their own fiber, I don't know how they're working around that with their own fiber if they're able to. I don't know. They might have a suggestion for that, like Rich said, after the storm. But I do know it is happening to some of our members, not just power companies, but as they're clearing the streets, even. So.
All right. Well, thank y'all.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is. Next is T-Mobile.
Yeah, good afternoon, Commissioner, and thank you all for your time. My name is Craig Martinez. I'm the National Public Safety Advisor for T-Mobile. And like most of the country, I watched tragic events unfold from afar. So our thoughts and prayers are with you and your families at this time. As a retired chief of police, I understand a lot of work goes into this and there's a lot more to be done. So thank you all for your patience. Part of what I do here at T-Mobile, me and my team, is I oversee the national efforts for public safety strategy and disaster response. And when looking at the state of Georgia and T-Mobile, we're looking at our facilities, obviously, prior to the event and after as well. Our actual facility sustained very little damage, but we obviously, like my counterparts at the other carriers, we're heavily impacted by loss of commercial power and the backhaul between, connections between our sites. Some of kind of the areas that the sites in Clinton and Lincoln counties suffered physical damage. All the other impacts to our network were only due to mainly a loss of power. And I'm going to repeat a couple things that our counterparts have already said, but we're all kind of in that same boat. As of this morning, T-Mobile has largely restored coverage in most areas. Again, as we recover power and backhaul and our partners work on those connections individually, experiences may differ. When we talk about downed sites, because the total in Georgia, we have around 452 sites. This was as of this morning from the DERS report, by the way. About 23% of those, 103 were down. That doesn't mean there's no overlapping coverage in those areas. So you may see some degraded connectivity based on that need. And we do have 53 of those up on portable generator. Obviously, we have a lot of the sites hardened with fixed generators and batteries as well. T-Mobile, we pre-positioned and utilized our national emergency management assets, as well as from our national emergency support vendor with Infinity Communications. And obviously, we're working closely with our state, local, and federal partners with the full barnyard of sack colts, cows, Wi-Fi trailers, and things like that, drones that can also deliver payloads if need be. We have three teams working for T-Mobile: emergency response, which is my team, emergency management, and then our community support teams that are out and about providing food, water, and charging stations for the community that are in some of the affected areas. Progress has been tremendous, but like our counterparts in wireless, we continue to work around the clock. But right now, we're not really able to predict when complete restoration is going to be achieved. Looking at the DERS report from this morning, it's roughly about 80% restored. And so we're making strides every hour, not just days here. Every hour, we're making more and more strides at getting all of those areas affected back up and running. As far as contact with T-Mobile, one of the things I recommend is going to tmobile.com if there's any needs. You can also call 611 as a T-Mobile customer to talk to customer care. We have an 800 number. It's 800-937-8997. And we also point everyone to our newsroom posts that are updated daily. And it actually has a archived position of where it's actually been. And then for the disaster response side of the house, we do have a 24/7, 365 monitored number at 888-639-0020, or you can email request to ertrequests@t-mobile.com. And that's really all I have to report, Commissioner. Open to any questions folks may have.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Any questions for T-Mobile? I see Commissioner Eccles.
Yes, I know Commissioner Pridemore had raised this point about bill credits for service outage. And I know sometimes companies like Xfinity, they require you to actually reach out to them and then they'll give you credit. I just wonder if Verizon and T-Mobile and AT&T on the cell service, the affected areas, which towers were down. I wonder if you could just do an automatic credit for these customers as opposed to making them have to call you after the fact and try to go through customer service with maybe long hold times as a result of people trying to reach back out. Is that a possibility that y'all could say and tell us right now that you could give them a day or 5 or 7 or whatever the outage is automatically without the customer having to reach out?
That's a great idea, sir. And I'll actually check with the team to see, one, if it's already happening, and two, if not, what we need to make that happen. So great call out. Appreciate that.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you again, Mr. Martinez. Appreciate what y'all are doing. Moving on. Next is Windstream.
Yes, sir.
Hey.
Apologize for the informal office. Michael Four, President of Operations.
Michael, I'm just glad you could join us because I know you're out in the field working. So appreciate you joining us this afternoon.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for that. President of Operations for Kinetic by Windstream here in Georgia. Everybody's done a great job of summing it up. We do have a significant amount of impact in that region, that southeast portion. Have just a little bit left in Rabun County that we should have up before long. Initially, we had about 140,000 customers impacted by it. We've been able to drop that by about 110,000 over the last few days. So a lot of work's been going on, a lot of positive work. We've been working closely with our, backhaul. That was one of the first things we wanted to do with the cell tower providers because, we understood the urgency there. And we are working now on continuing to get more granular and get to the household level. The amount of devastation is just truly impactful in our ability to recover too quickly. We've already worked in front of the debris being cleaned up and the poles being repaired. So the care that can be taken on not cutting those fibers again is truly appreciated there. We've had that happen several times over the last couple of days, and that's a great point to bring out. But please don't take that as any indication to the cooperation going on in the field, because the cooperation going on in the field between these teams is remarkable as we work to recover. we have brought in teams. We've got all our construction yards across Georgia and the Southeast. We brought in teams from all over to support us, plus the hundreds of employees that we have that live in these communities that were impacted. So everybody's working hard to get it restored. We've got a normal refueling process schedule in line for the areas that we have on generator. Just continuing to work hard. So willing to field any questions you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Ford?
Michael, if you could tell folks how to reach Kinetic Windstream, please.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Sorry, I missed that point. 2 points I missed, really. One is we have suspended all disconnects. Number two is the number is 1-800-326-6314. And our customers can also use the Go Kinetic app to communicate with us.
Well, any other questions? Well, Michael, I know, Windstream's a major provider here in our region that's affected by the storm. And I just want to thank y'all for all your efforts. And I know that especially the efforts going on in terms of coordinating, because I've been a part of a little bit of that as well. And it's been it's been one of the things that will make you smile in these events is how well that's going. And I appreciate that. And that starts with your team.
Yes, sir.
And we all understand that the first step is getting the poles back up and the power restored, and then you guys but y'all are coming in right behind them. I mean, I'm using Lakeland as an example here because that's where I'm sitting. Obviously, y'all see my front yard behind me in the background, so there's definitely no power there. But here in the towns, y'all were able to get the essentials connected just right behind the power companies, and I wouldn't be able to sit here today. I would have had to get real creative. If this call had been about 3 hours earlier, I would not be on.
Yes.
So thank y'all. Any other questions? No. Michael, is there anything else that we can do at the commission to assist or that you can think of?
No, thank you for the opportunity to share. I think it's just important that everyone understands it's a process,
And it's going to take some time.
It's going to take some time. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you for that.
And we're going to have to be patient. Folks are going to have to be patient because we're going to be seeing some wires on the ground for a while around here. So it's going to take some time. Yes. But thank you, Michael, as always. Well, next, we'll move on. And this, I think, is going to be the final. So we're getting close to the end. Georgia Cable Association.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Hunter Hopkins here with the Georgia Cable Association. Thank y'all for letting us participate. Kind of find it funny that we're the last ones on the agenda because we're usually the last ones to get up on the polls. So appreciate the opportunity to speak to y'all today and update you on the efforts of the cable industry to restore communication services to our customers around the state. As I mentioned, my name is Hunter Hopkins. I serve as the executive director of the Georgia Cable Association. Since our founding in 1968, the Cable Association has been the voice of the cable industry in the state of Georgia. Our members provide high-speed broadband, video, and voice service to about 2.1 million customers spread across 129 counties of our state. Our member companies include Charter, Comcast, Cox, Mediacom, and Vive Broadband. I want to briefly update you on our cable company's efforts to restore service to our customers after the destruction caused by Hurricane Helene. After my comments, I've got some representatives from some of our member companies that can give you some specific updates on what their companies are doing to restore their customers. There's really three key issues that I want to address this afternoon. Number one is, what is cable doing to restore service and bridge the gap of the service disruptions? Number two, power restoration and access to the damaged areas. And number three, protecting existing infrastructure. First, our cable companies have comprehensive emergency response plans in place to ensure that we are ready with the staff, equipment, and resources to respond as soon as possible after a storm. Our companies are marshaling crews, trucks, generators, fuel, and material ahead of the storm so we could access the affected areas and mitigate the impact to our customers as safely and quickly as possible. And we have well-established systems to communicate with our customers about their service through their preferred method of communication, whether that be text, email, social media, or personal phone call, before and after the storm and throughout the restoration process. Since the storm hit, the cable industry has been working diligently to restore service to the affected areas. Key efforts include deploying crews to assess and repair damaged infrastructure, such as downed plant and damaged network infrastructure. Cable companies are utilizing drones and advanced technology to expedite damage assessment and prioritize restoration efforts. Communication with customers is a priority, with regular updates on restoration progress shared via social media and direct messaging. In addition, many of our providers are offering temporary solutions like portable Wi-Fi hotspots to ensure customers stay connected while repairs are underway. Cable companies have opened a total of about 180,000 hotspots to the public in Georgia, whether they are customers or not. The cable industry as you've previously heard, the cable industry is heavily reliant on commercial electric power, whether it be the power supply to our network infrastructure, the plant located on utility poles or buried in conduits underground, or the power in each of our customers' homes or businesses. In some cases, our industry must wait for the electrical infrastructure to be restored before we can gain access to start repairing our cable network. As we've seen with this most recent storm and previous ones, commercial power can sometimes, understandably, take a long time to be restored based on the severity of the damage in some areas. I would also note that power outages in one area can impact broadband video and voice service to customers in another area. Not surprisingly, in many cases, our networks aren't aligned with the power grid. You might have cases where our network is operable, but due to power loss at the customer's location, they can't access our services. In other scenarios, the customer might have power, but the power to our network infrastructure, such as a node or a hub, might be without power, causing our network to be inoperable. Whatever the circumstances, power restoration is a critical component of the cable industry restoring service to our customers. Likewise, gaining access to damaged areas is a top priority. Our emergency crews must appropriately wait for the roads to be cleared and opened before they can safely proceed to repair our facilities. Collaboration and coordination with local authorities and the electric utilities is critical. Our companies are working hard to connect with these parties on the ground so we can coordinate our efforts to restore services as efficiently as possible. We welcome any opportunity to be included in construction meetings with the electric providers so that we can know when and where electric service is being restored so we can come in right behind them. Lastly, the protection of existing operational facilities is a critical challenge for our members. While our plan has sustained physical damage from the storm, we see in some cases that the storm itself has not damaged our plant. It can be repaired as poles are corrected and debris is cleared, but that undamaged plant is sometimes cut by tree crews and others working to clear the roads during the restoration process, assuming incorrectly that our infrastructure is not operational. This adds to the damage that our companies must repair and can compound customer outages. Again, collaboration with local authorities, power companies, and their contractors working to clear debris goes a long way towards avoiding this unnecessary damage and service disruption. We'd appreciate assistance from everyone here in educating their crews and calling our companies for help before they cut a cable line. Overall, the cable company industry is focused on quickly restoring service while ensuring customer support throughout the recovery efforts. I know I've covered some very broad issues facing our industry as we work to restore service to the affected areas. The Cable Association's members can update you on their activities in their particular service areas across the state. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Daryl Cheney with MediaCom.
Thank you, Chairman Shaw. Appreciate you allowing MediaCom to join the briefing. My name is Daryl Cheney. I'm the Senior Director of Area Operations down here in Valdosta. Just like everyone else has discussed, we have a emergency plan that we are working right now to work to help out our customers and our communities that we serve. MediaCom basically serves Southwest Georgia. We're 29 counties that we serve. from the Alabama line to the I-75 corridor and the Florida line north to Columbus and just south of Warner Robins. So we have about 330 employees here in Georgia, serving 15 office areas. We have probably about 25% of those employees are right now engaged in our worst heavily hit areas on the I-75 corridor between Valdosta and just south of Warner Robins Perry area, just a little bit to the east side of the interstate. So that I-75 corridor for us was probably about 25% of our customer base that is impacted by the major storm that came through. For Valdosta, one of the largest areas that was hit for us is following the same path last year as Idalia. So we're working together with all of our public and private partners trying to restore services as quickly as possible. And we basically understand the path because we worked real hard last year to restore services. And we have MediaCom has brought in internal crews from multiple states, Florida, Georgia, Alabama, the Midwest with Iowa and Missouri, and even the Northeast down from Delaware, bringing in internal employees to come out and help us. We have 12 contract crews that are on the ground now working with restorations, and we have access to another 50 crews once we are able to gain access a little bit more following our power company partners and allowing us access. So we are really appreciative of what's going on here in South Georgia, and we're really happy with the partnerships that we're seeing and really proud of the people that are out there and working. So MediaCom had about 33,000 customers offline at the peak of the storm over the weekend. About 60% of those have been restored. We still have about 14,000 customers that are offline in that I-75 corridor from Valdosta north to Fitzgerald to Eastman, McRae, Hazelhurst, just on the east side of Interstate 75. Just in the last 24 hours, we restored 2,000 more customers to provide high-speed internet, cable television, and telephone services. Within that restoration, we have a plan to continue to gain access and get those 14,000 customers up and running, working basically between Valdosta, the Valdosta office, a Tifton office, and a Fitzgerald office, where we have 3 command centers to support the communities here in Southwest Georgia. We have supply chain has basically been taken care of. We have national warehouses in the Midwest and in Georgia. So we have all the materials on hand. We have about 200 miles of network damage that we're going to be able to repair with the materials that are already in the state. And we're working to restore that. We believe we'll get another 2,000 customers back on today, and then that again over tomorrow and the weekend, working with our partners. We're really rural, so we have a lot of rural areas and a lot of rural customers, just like your area there in Lanier County. So in Lowndes County, Lanier County, Berrien County, Tift County, we're really focusing our efforts to get the city centers up and running, and then working out into the rural communities. Also, as a partnership, we have 80 mobile community Wi-Fi areas in Valdosta. 40 of those are currently up and running. 48 of those are currently up and running. The communities can look at our MediaCom website to get the locations for those community Wi-Fi hotspots, MediacomCable.com, or they can call us at one of our 24-hour support centers. National number is 855-633-4226. So we believe that we have a good plan in place. It is going to be a long road, just like we've all been discussing. The reliance on commercial power is very important to our success, and that team cooperation of finding out when the power companies are clear, when everything is safe for us to go in and enter is really a big part of our communication plan. We've been in touch with our our power partners, and they've been able to help us out with streets that they're in and streets that they're moving away from. And that communication we want to continue to improve, continue to increase. That's really going to help us to provide internet and television services to the community. That's becoming more of a necessity than it used to be. So it's vital to that. And then we're also increasing our communication with our municipalities just to make sure that we understand how traffic is moving through the streets. And we actually have times where we've been able to have street closures because of the roads and the vehicles moving on roads. Has really been a challenge when cars are driving potentially the speed limit or faster, and there's a lot of debris. So working with our city engineers and working with the traffic managers has really been helpful for us. And we're going to continue to try to do that as we work to improve and get these last 14,000 customers online. So that's basically what I have, and can take questions.
Okay, thank you, Daryl. Any questions? Okay.
I've got a question for Hunter. Hey, Hunter,
Hello.
you mentioned that you talked about this phenomena of that cables equipment on the pole might be okay, but that the pole itself is damaged and is being replaced, and the cable companies don't have a method to go out and retrieve their good working equipment. How prevalent is that? And I guess why not? Why don't we have something in place to allow the cable company to go retrieve working equipment on a permanently damaged pole?
Oh, Commissioner, it's mainly the plant, and you heard AT&T and then Rhonda Chatham and some of the other providers mention. At times our existing fiber lines or older cable coaxial cable lines are up on the poles. The pole might come down, but technically the line is still intact. But as some of the crews are coming in to clear the debris from the roads, they'll end up cutting it as kind of I guess Commissioner Eccles mentioned, is there some way to kind of tag it or somewhere, some type of system like that? Unfortunately, we aren't the first ones on the scene in a case like this. We're having to wait our turn, before we get in, before we can get in and assess the situation.
Okay, you're saying it's the same issue that the phone guys have. All right.
Yes, ma'am. Pretty much. Yes, ma'am.
You said it differently. It made me think this was a separate issue. So,
no,
okay.
It's the same thing.
This issue that we've been talking about today has been with us since the pole was invented and erected. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's the high voltage guys are the ones that operate and manage that pole. So we get it.
Yes, okay. Ma'am. Okay. All right, Mr. Chairman, next we have Comcast.
Okay, go ahead, Amy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Amy Averill, and I'm Vice President of Regulatory Affairs for Comcast. And I truly appreciate this opportunity to share with you all the hard work that our employees and business partners have been doing 24 hours a day, as everyone else on the call, since Helene struck Georgia. Just a brief background, Comcast provides video, broadband, and voice services in approximately 70 counties in Georgia, including Metro Atlanta, Augusta, Savannah, Brunswick, and Northwest Georgia. More than 3.1 million Georgia homes and businesses have access to our services, and they're delivered through nearly 78,000 network miles in the state. And we employ approximately 4,000 people in the state. As Hunter mentioned, our preparations in advance of Helene included staging emergency generators and fuel trucks and bringing in additional technical and network restoration teams to be deployed promptly to impacted areas. So, as we've all discussed, we saw the storm coming and we all put our emergency preparedness plans into play. Comcast now has more than 350 response crew from all over the Southeast and and Chicago and Detroit, working in rotation for 24-hour coverage for all areas of impact in Georgia. And at last count, they estimate replacing more than 120 miles of fiber and cable. With respect to the damage and customer outages that Comcast has experienced, I want to focus on our hardest hit areas, which are Augusta and Savannah. In the immediate aftermath of the storm, first off, Comcast sustained significant damage to our facilities in these areas, primarily to our aerial spans. Approximately 64% of our customers in the Savannah area, which includes 9 surrounding counties, had lost service. As of this morning, service to at least 66% of those customers had been restored. And as I think everyone knows, Augusta was hit harder. More than 90% of our customers in an 8-county area in and around Augusta lost service. As of this morning, nearly 25% of those customer service is back online. Our response teams have really made significant progress over the last several days, but as discussed, emergency management procedures dictate that electricity must be restored first, and Comcast must receive clearance that it's safe for crews to begin any restoration work. We certainly are working in tandem with the local utility companies and local authorities to restore connectivity once electricity returns to homes and businesses as quickly as we can. In fact, we have stationed a Comcast employee in the GEMA Emergency Operations Center out of Augusta, so that we can learn as quickly as possible what others are doing, where services are being restored, so that we can coordinate our efforts. I don't want to belabor the point because it has been mentioned numerous times, but I did want to say that Comcast has also experienced numerous instances of accidental cuts to our fiber lines, including those that have been newly repaired, including as recently as this afternoon to today. Improved coordination among all the parties, I think, could really help us avoid these unnecessary and compounding damages. And we look forward to exploring additional solutions in the future. Finally, I'd just like to mention briefly that as many of the utilities on this call have done, Comcast employees have distributed more than 20 pallets of water to the communities of Augusta. And we announced today that the company is contributing $100,000 to the United Way of the Central Savannah River area and $50,000 to the Salvation Army Savannah Corps to support ongoing disaster relief and recovery efforts. And in addition to the relief funds, Comcast is donating significant advertising time for public service announcements in Georgia to keep customers, their families, and loved ones informed on the latest developments following the storm. So thank you very much for this opportunity to share Comcast's efforts. Our crews are working around the clock until services are restored, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Bradmore.
Amy, since you brought it up again, I've got an obvious question. Why in the world would cable or telephone go try to restore service in an area before power was already restored? So, for example, if you've went in and replaced a line and power hasn't been restored yet, you know that the line's not going to work. Why? In my experience, cable and telephone follows power, not goes in ahead of it. So these multiple cuts, it doesn't make sense to me.
Commissioner, I think these are in areas, I would definitely want to explore this a little further, but I do believe that these are areas where the power has been restored, because you're right, we do not go in until everything is safe and power is restored and that there are not, lines down on the ground. But I think there is still a lot of clearing debris that happens. But we are still trying to get our services up and running as quickly as possible. So I think that's an issue. Plus, there is the issue that Hunter raised also with respect to, it might not even be a newly repaired line. It might be a line that was intact and not damaged and service was not disconnected that got cut because of the remediation efforts and clearing efforts.
That I get, because that's just been a beast that's been with us since the concept of shared poles. But the repeated cutting of a line that's a new line, it's not gelling with me. I would love to talk to a technician that could tell me why. And I'm not singling you out, but it could be yours at Cutter, it could be any of y'all's, it could be one of Rich's or what have you. But it to lay a line and then have it repeatedly cut, I don't know, it just doesn't. I need operational guidance on that. But thank you, Amy.
All right.
I want to follow up on that, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
When you go back, Amy, and the line is repaired, it's not repaired and left laying on the ground. Isn't it repaired and put back up on the pole?
In a lot of cases, Commissioner, these are temporary lines that may be on the ground. They may be awaited. They might actually have been, well, I might need to go get back a little and get a little more detail, but I think that some of them could be waiting to be buried or hung up on poles while we're awaiting the new pole to be set. I think there are a variety of different facts and circumstances, but I do know that this is in an effort to try to restore our services as quickly as possible once power in the area has been restored. Again, I mean, Commissioner Prodmore is absolutely right that we're not going into areas where power hasn't at least come through.
Well, even if it's a temporary line, if it's going back up on the pole, and the cuts that you're having, is it more expensive to just go ahead and attach it to the pole? So maybe not quite as high as the pole attachment contracts allow, but I'm just at a loss that you would repair it and it would still be laying on the ground, unless it was going to be buried. And if it was going to be buried, it would show where it was buried back up here somewhere. And
I believe this.
That's for you smart people to work out.
I will look into that further.
Well, thank you, Amy. Thank you for joining us. And do we have anyone else from cable that wanted to speak?
Yes, sir. Catherine Fleming with Charters on the line, Chairman.
Oh, hey, good afternoon, Catherine.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Thank you so much for having Charter to talk about this important topic. My name is Catherine Fleming. I'm the State Director of Government Affairs for Charter here in Georgia. As most of you know, Charter is a leading provider of broadband, voice, and video services, and we operate in 41 states. Here in Georgia, Charter serves roughly a third of the counties in the state with more than 400,000 customers and 740 employees. The furthest south our market goes is Lawrence County. And so because of that, we were not as impacted as a number of the utilities that have spoken so far on this call. In regard to Helene, Charter's hardest hit markets, right, were Lawrence County, Washington County, and Clark County. Given the track of the storm, we were fortunate to have most of our infrastructure escape the worst of the damage. However, where we were impacted, we're working as quickly as possible, as others have noted, to get services in impacted areas back up online, coordinating with GEMA, local EMAs, governments, and power companies. Our teams have been staged and are ready to quickly assess damages as soon as areas are deemed safe and make repairs to restore service to our impacted customers as power is returned, as we've discussed. Charter understands the impact of being without service has, and we continue to provide updates to our customers via their preferred method of communication, text, call, or email as they become available. If customers are trying to reach Charter, they can do so through the Spectrum app or by calling us at 1-833-267-6094. And then finally, I'm pleased to let you know that Charter has committed $250,000 in cash contributions to support Hurricane Helene relief efforts across our southeastern footprint. These contributions will assist organizations in providing much needed aid and assistance to impacted communities. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Any questions? Okay, well, thank you very much, Catherine. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I've got one more. Cox Communications.
Okay, go ahead.
Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Karen Fry. I am the Market Vice President for Cox Communications here in Middle Georgia. I'm responsible for the overall leadership and operations in the Middle Georgia market, which covers Bibb County, Houston County, part of Peach County, part of Monroe County. We have about 150 employees and around 100,000 customers in the area. Overall, Cox in Middle Georgia was very fortunate throughout the storm. Our teams were well prepared going into it. In the aftermath of the storm, we had nearly 10% of our customers down, but that was mainly related to power issues, so they were back online once power was restored. We did not have any impacts to any of our facilities. We did not need to bring in any additional resources, and on Monday, September 30th, once our customers offline normalized, we were back to our BAU status. We're just very thankful for the great work that was completed by our local utility partners to ensure our customers were taken care of as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Karen. Any questions? All right. Well, thanks to everyone for joining us. Does any commissioners have anything they want to final comments to make before we adjourn?
I'd just like to say quickly, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the utilities for making all their customer service information available in this, that this is going to be hosted on the PSC's website. Also, too, I know we've talked a lot about electric power providers, particular Georgia Power, the EMCs, and the Electric Cities members. But there are other people out in the field that are doing clearing and work. GDOT is out in force, as well as local governments, local emergency management personnel. And so I know we've talked about cut lines and some things over the last couple of hours, but there's a lot of people out in the state right now doing vegetation management with chainsaws and clearing some of this debris away. And so just be kind to your utility providers. I know that these guys are working really hard, and I know that all of us on the commission support them and their safety and their ability to get things done quickly.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, I apologize for dropping off a while ago. My computer was plugged into my EV.
Oh, Lord.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I want to say thank you to everybody out there. Appreciate you participating today, and please stay safe out there.
Thank you.